Ashraf hopes to get married next year.
Number 14.
He's come to a clinic for his premarital tests before heading to work.
Your spouse is from your same family?
Yes.
After questions about his lifestyle and family's health history, he gives a blood sample. It's tested for a range of genetic, hereditary and communicable diseases, and he will return in a week for his results. This is one of a number of clinics here in Doha where couples come for premarital testing. Now, doctors hope that the procedure, which is now law, will go some way towards lessening the high rates of hereditary and genetic diseases associated with intermarriage, both here in Qatar and the wider Middle East. A 2004 Cambridge University study in Qatar found over 50% of marriages were between cousins. It's common in countries with strong tribal traditions.
The reason for marriage between blood relatives is totally tradition. And tradition has been based on economic reasons, keeping the wealth within the family. The numbers that are reported are mostly an underestimate. So I would look at, with a grain of salt, at these numbers. What's significant is we have a high prevalence of consanguineous marriages, and we have a high prevalence of marriages that have a significant outcome that needs attention.
Like 4 of her 6 sisters, Fatima married her cousin. Her daughter has Down syndrome. While it can't conclusively be proven that intermarriage was to blame, experts say if there's a history of genetic or hereditary disease in a family, the risks increase.
Of course, if I could go back in time, and if I had done premarital tests and knew the risks involved, I would have changed my mind. I might have abandoned the idea of getting married to my relative.
By law, anyone of any nationality wanting to get married in Qatar must have the tests. And if the results reveal any potential risks for their children, they're given counselling, but they can still get married.
I did not think about the risk, but later on, after I got married, I started reading about it. I got married young. I never thought of having a child suffering from an illness or with special needs.
It's now 7 days since Ashraf had his tests, and he's back at the clinic to get his results. The risks of a tradition practiced for centuries, now under the microscope, and a young generation forced to take notice. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera, Doha.
My name is Rahul. I am a telecoms engineer working in Dubai since 2002. I want to ask a few questions. Coming from my background, I think religion is something that following that, you're safe from having problems in your life. My first question is, I recently read a report by a doctor saying that because of marriages in first cousins in Islam, it leads to a higher probability of the fetuses being born as handicaps. It increases the probability of the babies born without hands or without legs. So if it was something that could potentially cause harm, it should not have been allowed in Islam. Another point I would like to add to the same question is, recently I suffered a little bit of a BP, and I went to the doctor, and the first thing he said to me is that stop eating red meat, which is again allowed in Islam. So I would think that if these things could be harmful to the human body, these should not have been allowed by who has created us. So if you can clarify me on that.
The brothers asked 2 questions. The first question that is talking about consanguineous marriages. Consanguineous marriages means marriage between close relatives. In English, it's called as consanguineous marriages. And in consanguineous marriages, medical science tells us today, there are high chances of genetic problems. And I do agree with the brother. So why does Islam permit that?
Yes.
It's clearly mentioned in the Quran in Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 22 to 24, the woman who you can marry and the woman who you cannot marry is mentioned there. Amongst them, it's clearly mentioned you cannot marry your sister and a lady cannot marry the brother. It's mentioned. Neither the father, neither the mother. You cannot marry the brother of your father, the ladies, and you cannot marry the sister of your father. That means the important close relatives are mentioned in the Quran. Brother, sister cannot marry, son and mother, father and daughter, paternal uncle, maternal uncle can't marry. But as far as first cousins are concerned, Islam does give permission. Now, as far as consanguineous marriages are concerned, the maximum problem comes when you marry your direct blood brother and sister. Consanguineous marriage. Even if you marry your direct father, daughter, mother and son, or your uncle, the chances are also there if you marry your first cousin, but negligible, very negligible. So
No,
Islam...
that's not what the report said. The report said that because of marriages in first cousins, not your brothers and sisters, it leads to this problem. And it was from a doctor. It was published in Gulf News as well, actually.
Brother, let me complete. Even I am a doctor.
Ah, okay.
Fine. Even I am a medical doctor.
Yeah.
It means medical doctor with that doctor.
Yeah.
The chances in direct relatives are very high.
Yeah.
If a sister and brother marry, the chances are very high.
Yeah.
If a father and daughter are very high. You have read only one report, you haven't read the other report.
Yeah.
So you only read Gulf News, I read medical books. So Gulf News is better or medical books is, brother?
Right,
Which
so
is better?
your point is marrying in first cousins, the
lesser-
chances of getting
lesser-
problem is negligible.
As compared to brother and sister.
As compared to,
Yes,
as compared to, yeah.
yes, compared
But still there is a...
Brother, will you let me complete my answer or?
Sorry, yeah, please.
So you have more faith in Gulf News?
No, not really. I'm here to find the truth.
Truth, that's right. So what you realize that consanguineous marriage, and I agreed with you. I didn't say it's not there.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to beat around the bush. But compared, it is negligible compared to direct blood brother and sister. Now, I do agree that there are medical genetic problems in various ways. But this report is there when you have continuously generation after generation. And our beloved Prophet, that according to Dr. Ahmad Sakari says, the Prophet said, do not marry against first cousins generation after generation. If you do it once or twice, it is no problem. Yet, even if you marry not cousins also, you can get a problem. Do you know that?
Yeah, that.
So that doesn't mean that you stop marriage only.
Right, so there is a hadith which says that do not do it generation after generation.
Yes, but otherwise, generally, there's no problem.
The principle that you are free to do whatever you like so long as you don't harm anyone else. Because if a brother and sister wanted to have intercourse with each other and have a relationship with each other and be in a romantic, non-platonic relationship with each other, then surely they should have been able to do so. Now someone will say, who's consistent? Yeah, I agree with you. It's not about you agreeing with me now. This is a historical argument because in the last 60 years, this is simply not been the case. You've had countries that have, and you still have countries that illegalize incest. We have not seen an uproar within kind of liberal society about incest rights. We haven't even seen that within LGBTQ communities. I don't know why there's not LGBTQI for incest in there. It would make a lot more sense if there was. Anti-normative practices of the incestuous kind, or those who are orientated in an incestuous way, have been sidelined and according to them have been oppressed. You know, they have been suppressed. We talk about coming out of the closet, come out of the homosexuality closet. Why not come out of the incest closet?
If you look just at the Quran, you will get the indication that you can have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. The reason why it's haram to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old is not found in the Quran at all. If you just read the Quran, it is halal, it would be halal to have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. Chapter 65, verse 4. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us who you can divorce and who you cannot divorce. And then he says, وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ, and the ones who had never been pubescent before. And by the way, this is very important, yeah? I want all Muslims to be aware of this. The reason why we don't have sexual intercourse with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds or whatever is not because of puberty. Wait a minute, what did you say? It's not because of puberty, because that verse in the Quran actually says lam yahid. They never had puberty before. You can't go around that. The Quran doesn't say anywhere in the Quran that the woman has to be pubescent. I dare you to find one verse in the Quran where it says you're not allowed to marry someone based on harm, or you're not allowed to have sexual intercourse based on harm, or you're not allowed to marry someone based on puberty. Get me one verse in the Quran which says the woman has to be pubescent. No. You know in the Quran it says حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ. It says you're not allowed to marry your mum. It says you're not allowed to marry your sister, your auntie. Where does it say you're not allowed to marry a prepubescent? I'm looking for one verse that you can say, you pinpoint it and say this is where it says prepubescent marriage or whatever is not allowed. So if you're Quran alone, you're steered towards pedophilia, and a severe type of pedophilia, a wife abuse, a severe type of wife abuse.
أبو حنيفة ما أعرف طبعا هو مذهبه إيه. لما أبو حنيفة طبعا أجاز بأن يجوز الولد أن ينكح أمه بشرط أن يضع على إحليله قماش.
تاني كده؟ لا.
When we say it, we are Islamophobic. Stay away from Islam.